Let me speak directly to you, the data scientist who stays up late wondering why your perfect model isn't working in production. It's probably not your code, it's your data quality. I spent 3 years blaming my algorithms before I realized the truth. No model can overcome systematically corrupted inputs. Today, I'll show you exactly how to diagnose if your data is sabotaging your work using the same techniques that saved my most important project from disaster. The truth is out there, setting up our data conspiracy. What if I told you that your data has been systematically lying to you for months, not just small inaccuracies, but fundamental distortions that have been influencing your business decisions without your knowledge? This isn't paranoia, it's what I call the data quality conspiracy. The data quality conspiracy isn't about people deliberately tampering with your information. It's about how seemingly reliable data can contain hidden systematic errors that persist undetected through your entire analytics pipeline. These errors don't show up as obvious outliers or missing values. They hide in plain sight, masquerading as valid information. 6 months ago, my team faced this exact situation. We were working on a demand forecasting model for a retail client using what we thought was a pristine dataset. We had sales figures, customer interactions, website traffic, all the standard metrics. Our initial models performed well in testing, showing promising accuracy rates around 87%. But when we moved to production, something strange happened. The model would work perfectly for 3 days, then produce wildly inaccurate forecasts for the next 2. We'd recalibrate and the pattern would repeat, just differently enough that we couldn't establish a clear cause. At first, we did what most data teams do. We blamed the model. We adjusted parameters, added features, even rebuilt our architecture from scratch. Nothing helped. The inconsistencies persisted regardless of which modeling approach we used. That's when I decided to take a closer look at our input data. I plotted basic time series visualizations of our primary metrics, expecting to see normal variations. What I found instead were subtle but undeniable patterns in the data itself. There were micro fluctuations that didn't align with any known business cycles or seasonal effects. The most alarming visualization showed our website traffic data. When plotted against time, there were consistent dips every 72 hours. Dips that weren't explained by weekends, holidays, or any marketing activities. These patterns were too regular to be random, yet too subtle to trigger our standard anomaly detection. These weren't just academic curiosities. Our client had made inventory decisions based on our forecasts, ordering excess stock for periods when sales actually declined. The miscalculations cost them approximately $230,000 in a single quarter, money spent on storage, transport, and eventual discounting of unsold merchandise. I still remember the moment I spotted the first significant pattern. I was working late, running what felt like my 100th diagnostic test. The visualization appeared on my screen, a seemingly normal time series plot, but then I noticed how the peaks and troughs aligned too perfectly across different time periods. I actually pushed back from my desk, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. This wasn't random noise. This was a systematic issue. That night, I started what my team would later jokingly call my conspiracy board. I printed out dozens of visualizations, time series analyses, and correlation matrices. I connected them with strings and nodes looking for relationships between the anomalies. My office wall became a map of our data's hidden flaws. As I collected more evidence, the scale of the problem became clear. The inconsistencies weren't limited to a single data source or metric. They appeared across multiple systems, affecting everything from sales data to customer behavior analytics. The pattern suggested that something fundamental was corrupting our information at a systemic level. After 2 weeks of investigation, we found our first concrete clue. When examining the raw log data, we discovered timestamp inconsistencies that shouldn't exist in properly processed data. Some records showed timestamps that were exactly 72 hours apart, down to the millisecond, a statistical impossibility in genuine user behavior data. Looking deeper, we found that roughly 15% of our records had timestamps that didn't match their associated metadata. In some cases, the creation date was earlier than the data collection date. In others, the modification timestamps showed patterns that indicated batch processing rather than real-time collection, despite our system supposedly operating in real time. These timestamp anomalies explained the 72-hour cycle we had observed in our visualizations. Something in our data pipeline was introducing systematic errors on a 3-day cycle. The timestamps weren't just wrong, they were wrong in a consistent, predictable pattern that had eluded our quality checks for months. The implications were significant. If timestamps were being systematically altered, what other attributes in our dataset might be affected? How many decisions had been influenced by this corrupted information? The questions multiplied faster than our answers. We began reconstructing the journey of our data from collection to analysis. Each transformation, each processing step, each storage system became a potential suspect. We created test datasets and tracked them through the entire pipeline, documenting every change to identify where the corruption occurred. The process revealed that our data wasn't just occasionally wrong. It was being systematically altered by flaws in our architecture. The conspiracy wasn't intentional, but its effect on our analysis was just as damaging as if someone had deliberately manipulated our information. This investigation changed my entire approach to data science. I realized that no matter how sophisticated your models or how powerful your algorithms, they're ultimately at the mercy of your data quality. The garbage in, garbage out principle isn't just a cliché. It's a fundamental truth that many professionals underestimate. What makes data quality issues particularly dangerous is that they don't announce themselves. They don't trigger errors or crash your systems. Instead, they silently influence your results, leading to plausible but incorrect conclusions that can persist undetected for months or even years. The timestamp inconsistencies we discovered were just the beginning. They were the thread that, when pulled, would eventually unravel the entire mystery of our data quality issues. But this was just the first red flag in what would become a full-blown data quality investigation, one that would reveal problems lurking in places we never thought to check. As we dug deeper, we discovered that seemingly minor decisions made months earlier in our ETL process had created the perfect conditions for systematic data corruption. The implications extended far beyond our immediate project, potentially affecting every analysis we had conducted over the previous year. But this was just the first red flag in what would become a full-blown data quality investigation. The red flags everyone missed. How did an entire organization of smart people miss these obvious warning signs? It's a question I asked myself repeatedly during our investigation. The answer reveals something fundamental about how modern organizations process data. To understand how these issues go undetected, we need to examine what a typical data pipeline looks like. In most organizations, data flows through multiple stages: collection from various sources, extraction and transformation processes, loading into data warehouses, analysis by data scientists, and finally, presentation to decision makers. Quality checks typically happen at 2 points: during initial data collection and during the final analysis phase. This creates a dangerous gap in the middle of the pipeline where data transformations occur with minimal oversight. Engineers focus on ensuring the pipeline runs efficiently, not necessarily that the data remains accurate through each transformation. Analysts assume the data reaching them has been properly validated upstream. This assumption creates a perfect blind spot where quality issues can multiply. During our investigation, we identified 3 critical red flags that appear in almost every case of systematic data quality failure. These signals were present in our data for months before we recognized them. The first red flag is temporal inconsistency. When examining time series data, look for patterns that don't align with natural business cycles. In our case, we noticed small but consistent fluctuations every 72 hours across multiple metrics. These patterns were subtle, a 3–4% variation that could easily be dismissed as normal volatility, but the regularity was the key indicator. Real-world data rarely shows such precise periodicity unless it's tied to a specific business process or calendar event. The second red flag is distribution drift. Subtle changes in the statistical properties of your data over time. We observed that the distribution of certain variables had shifted slightly, with the mean and standard deviation changing by small but statistically significant amounts. When we plotted these changes, we could see a gradual drift that coincided with updates to our ETL processes. The third and most commonly missed warning sign is relationship inconsistency. This occurs when established relationships between variables begin to change unexpectedly. In our dataset, the correlation between website visits and purchase rates had historically been strong, around 0.82, but dropped to 0.67 during certain time periods. This change occurred without any corresponding marketing strategy shifts or external market conditions that would explain it. What's troubling is that These signals were hidden in plain sight. Several team members had noticed anomalies but dismissed them as noise or acceptable variance. One analyst had even created a visualization showing the 72-hour pattern but labeled it normal cyclical variation in her report. One particularly telling example involved our customer segmentation data. We identified several hundred customers whose segment assignments changed multiple times within a single week, something that should be nearly impossible given their purchasing behavior. When questioned, the analyst who reviewed this data had noted these outliers but classified them as edge cases not worth investigating further. These missed signals illustrate a crucial point. Identifying outliers isn't enough. You need to determine whether those outliers represent random noise or systematic issues. In our case, the outliers followed patterns that indicated systematic problems, but our team lacked the visualization tools to recognize these patterns. This brings me to the visualization techniques that make these red flags immediately obvious. Traditional dashboards and reports often obscure exactly the patterns you need to spot. Instead, we found 3 visualization approaches particularly effective for identifying quality issues. First, heat maps of data completeness and consistency across time. By color-coding data quality metrics for each variable over time, patterns of degradation become immediately visible. When we applied this technique to our historical data, the 72-hour cycle appeared as distinct diagonal bands across the heat map. Second, distribution comparison plots that overlay the statistical distributions of the same variable across different time periods. These plots instantly reveal distribution drift that might otherwise go unnoticed. Using this technique, we identified 5 variables that had experienced significant distribution changes coinciding with our pipeline updates. Third, correlation matrices visualized over time. By tracking how relationships between variables evolve, you can spot sudden changes that indicate data quality issues. In our case, this visualization revealed relationship inconsistencies affecting nearly 20% of our key metrics. Why do experienced data professionals miss these signals? Confirmation bias plays a significant role. After investing considerable time building models and pipelines, data scientists become unconsciously resistant to evidence, suggesting fundamental flaws in their data. This cognitive bias leads them to interpret anomalies in ways that preserve their existing beliefs about the data's quality. A data scientist on our team had noticed unusual patterns in customer retention metrics, but rationalized them as the result of recent marketing campaigns. Another had observed inconsistencies in transaction timestamps, but attributed them to time zone conversion issues rather than systematic data corruption. In both cases, they chose explanations that didn't require questioning the fundamental integrity of our data pipeline. These individual biases are amplified by organizational factors. A survey by Gartner found that only 24% of organizations conduct systematic data quality assessments, while 91% report making critical business decisions based on data they suspect has quality issues. Even more concerning, 84% of organizations lack dedicated data quality monitoring systems that operate continuously throughout their data pipelines. When data quality signals are missed, the problems compound over time. Small inconsistencies in raw data become magnified through transformations, aggregations, and model training. What begins as a minor timestamp error can evolve into significantly skewed business forecasts. In our case, the initial timestamp inconsistencies led to incorrectly aggregated daily totals, which then distorted weekly trends, ultimately resulting in forecasting errors that cost our client hundreds of thousands of dollars. The most dangerous aspect of these compounding errors is that they create a false sense of confidence. As teams continue to work with corrupted data, they develop workarounds and adjustments that seem to address the symptoms without fixing the underlying quality issues. These adaptations become embedded in processes and models, making the eventual discovery of data quality problems even more disruptive. So, what red flags should you look for to determine if your data might be compromised? Watch for unexplained periodicity in metrics that shouldn't have regular cycles. Monitor the statistical distributions of key variables for unexpected shifts. Track correlation coefficients between related variables and investigate when established relationships change. Pay special attention to timestamps, which often reveal the first signs of systematic data corruption. And perhaps most importantly, question situations where your models perform inconsistently despite no apparent changes to their inputs or parameters. The most reliable indicator of data quality issues isn't technical, it's psychological. When team members start developing complex explanations for unexpected results, or when they dismiss anomalies without investigation, these are warning signs that data quality problems may be lurking beneath the surface. Now that we know what to look for, let's examine why these issues go undetected for so long. The selective blindness of data professionals. Could your technical expertise actually be preventing you from seeing the truth? This question might seem counterintuitive. After all, data professionals spend years developing specialized skills precisely to understand data better than others. Yet, this expertise itself creates specific blind spots that affect even the most experienced analysts and data scientists. The human brain excels at pattern recognition, but it's also susceptible to various cognitive biases that filter what we perceive. For data professionals, these biases take on unique forms that directly impact how we approach data quality. The most prevalent is confirmation bias, the tendency to search for and interpret information in ways that confirm our existing beliefs. When a data scientist develops a model, they form hypotheses about how variables interact and what outcomes to expect. Once these mental models take shape, confirmation bias leads them to notice evidence that supports their expectations while unconsciously filtering out contradictory signals. In our investigation, we found that team members had observed anomalies, but rationalized them as expected variations rather than indicators of data quality problems. Another powerful bias affecting data professionals is the curse of knowledge. Once you know something, it becomes difficult to imagine not knowing it. This creates a significant gap between how data engineers, data scientists, and business analysts perceive the same data set. Engineers understand the technical aspects of data collection and processing, but may not grasp how subtle anomalies affect business insights. Data scientists recognize statistical patterns, but might miss engineering-level metadata issues. Business analysts detect when insights contradict business realities, but lack the technical context to identify the source of discrepancies. The specialization that makes modern data teams effective also fragments responsibility for data quality. In most organizations, data flows through multiple specialized teams, each focusing on their specific domain. Data engineering builds pipelines, data science develops models, and business intelligence creates reports. This specialization creates accountability gaps, where each group assumes another is handling quality control. When interviewing members of our data team, I asked a simple question. Who is responsible for ensuring data quality in our organization? The responses were illuminating. Our data engineer said, "We ensure the pipeline runs correctly, but analysts validate the output." Our analyst responded, "We check that reports make sense, but we assume the data scientists verify the data integrity." Our data scientist said, "We test model performance, but we trust that engineering delivers reliable data." Each professional believed someone else was minding the quality gap. This siloed approach creates perfect conditions for data quality issues to proliferate. In one revealing instance, our marketing analytics team noticed unusual patterns in customer acquisition data but didn't report them because they fell outside their domain expertise. Simultaneously, the data engineering team observed pipeline processing anomalies but didn't escalate them because the outputs still met technical specifications. Neither team recognized they were observing two symptoms of the same underlying data quality problem. Beyond organizational structures, the pressure to deliver results quickly significantly impacts data quality. In today's business environment, speed often trumps thoroughness. A senior data scientist on our team admitted, "We were under tight deadlines to deliver the forecast model. I saw inconsistencies in the website traffic data, but decided to address them after the initial deployment. We never circled back to fix them." This pressure creates a dangerous pattern where temporary workarounds become permanent features of data pipelines. Data professionals also face increasing pressure to demonstrate value quickly. This creates a perverse incentive to proceed with analysis even when data quality is suspect. One analyst confessed, "I knew some of the customer segmentation data looked wrong, but questioning it would have delayed the project by weeks. The executive team wanted insights immediately, so I moved forward with caveats that everyone ignored." This rush to deliver results introduces technical debt into data systems, a concept borrowed from software development describing the future cost of choosing expedient but suboptimal solutions today. In data pipelines, technical debt accumulates in the form of hard-coded exceptions, undocumented transformations, and unvalidated assumptions. Each shortcut creates potential failure points where data quality can degrade. Unlike traditional technical debt, data quality debt compounds silently and affects all downstream analyses. A single unaddressed data quality issue in a core dataset can propagate through dozens of reports, dashboards, and models. Over time, teams build workarounds on top of workarounds, creating a fragile system where the original quality issues become deeply embedded and increasingly difficult to isolate. This technical debt manifestation particularly affects machine learning systems. Models trained on compromised data learn incorrect patterns and relationships, producing predictions that perpetuate and amplify the original data quality issues. These errors become increasingly difficult to trace back to their source as they move through complex analytical pipelines. Another cognitive factor affecting data professionals is optimism bias, the tendency to overestimate positive outcomes and underestimate negative possibilities. This bias manifests when data scientists assume their cleansing techniques have caught all significant problems, or when analysts believe outliers represent isolated anomalies rather than symptoms of systematic issues. This optimism leads teams to underinvest in data quality verification steps that seem redundant when everything appears to be working correctly. The specialized language and conceptual frameworks of different data domains further exacerbate communication barriers. Data engineers discuss ETL processes and pipeline efficiency, data scientists focus on model performance metrics, and business analysts prioritize actionable insights. These different frames of reference create situations where teams literally talk past each other, missing opportunities to identify quality issues that cross domain boundaries. In our investigation, we found email threads where engineering and analytics teams discussed the same data anomalies using completely different terminology. Neither recognized they were observing two aspects of the same problem because they lacked a shared vocabulary to connect their observations. So, why do so many data professionals miss critical quality issues? The answer lies in this perfect storm of cognitive biases, organizational silos, time pressures, accumulating technical debt, and communication barriers. Our expertise becomes a liability when it narrows our focus to our specialty area and creates blind spots to problems that cross boundaries. Our specialized knowledge helps us excel in our domains while simultaneously making it harder to step back and evaluate the entire data ecosystem. Addressing these blind spots requires both technical solutions and cultural changes. Teams need shared ownership of data quality across the entire pipeline, clear protocols for escalating potential quality issues, and dedicated time for cross-functional quality reviews. Most importantly, organizations need to recognize that data quality is not a technical problem to be solved once, but an ongoing commitment that requires continuous attention. These blind spots aren't just theoretical problems. They lead to real business consequences that directly impact the bottom line and erode trust in data-driven decision-making. When bad data drives bad decisions, which critical business decisions are you making right now based on corrupted data? This isn't a hypothetical question. Every day, executives across industries sign off on strategic initiatives, product launches, and resource allocations guided by analyses that may be fundamentally flawed due to data quality issues they never knew existed. To understand how corrupted data infiltrates decision-making, we need to examine the typical journey of data through an organization. Most business decisions follow a similar pattern. Raw data is collected from multiple sources, processed through various technical systems, transformed and aggregated into analysis, ready datasets, interpreted by analysts or algorithms, summarized in reports or dashboards, and finally presented to decision makers who take action based on these insights. This journey creates multiple points where quality issues can emerge. Collection methods may introduce sampling biases. Processing steps might create systematic errors. Transformation logic could contain flawed assumptions. Analysis might overlook critical context, and presentation may emphasize certain patterns while obscuring important caveats. At each stage, the distance between the raw data and the final decision grows, making it increasingly difficult to detect quality problems. The consequences of these hidden data quality issues can be severe. Consider the case of a major retail chain that invested $40 million in expanding their physical stores based on customer location data that showed growing demand in specific suburban areas. After opening 8 new locations that significantly underperformed projections, they discovered their customer address database contained systematic errors. Their geocoding process had incorrectly mapped nearly 23% of online customer addresses, creating artificial clusters of demand that didn't actually exist. By the time they identified the data quality issue, they had already signed multi-year leases on properties that would never deliver the expected returns. Another troubling example comes from a pharmaceutical company that terminated development of a promising drug candidate after clinical trial data indicated concerning side effects. 18 months later, during an unrelated data quality audit, they discovered that their trial management system had been incorrectly merging adverse event reports from multiple patients, making side effects appear more common than they actually were. The company had abandoned a potentially valuable treatment based on corrupted data, costing them an estimated $150 million in sunk development costs and lost market opportunity. The financial sector provides perhaps the most alarming example. An investment firm built a trading algorithm based on historical market data purchased from a leading provider. The algorithm performed well in backtesting but lost over $30 million in its first month of live trading. The subsequent investigation revealed that the historical data set contained timestamp errors that shifted certain market events by several minutes. These small temporal distortions created illusory patterns that the algorithm learned to exploit, patterns that didn't exist in the actual market. What makes this case particularly troubling is that the data vendor's quality assurance process had verified the accuracy of the prices themselves, but never checked the precise timing of those prices. I experienced a similar close call with our own team. We had spent 6 months developing a new product feature based on what our market analysis showed was a significant unmet customer need. 2 weeks before launch, while investigating the data quality issues I mentioned earlier, I discovered that our customer survey data had been processed incorrectly. The transformation logic had inadvertently given triple weight to responses from a particular user segment, dramatically overstating demand for the feature we were building. If we had launched as planned, we would have invested millions in a product enhancement that addressed a problem faced by only a small fraction of our users. I still remember the moment I realized what had happened. I was sitting at my desk late one evening, reviewing the raw survey data as part of our broader quality investigation, when I noticed discrepancies in the response counts. My stomach tightened as I dug deeper and uncovered the weighting error. The product team had already created marketing materials. The development work was nearly complete. Executives were expecting a significant revenue contribution from this initiative. I had to walk into the steering committee the next morning and explain that our entire business case was built on corrupted data. Certain types of business decisions are particularly vulnerable to data quality problems. Resource allocation decisions tend to be heavily influenced by forecasting models that can amplify small data errors into significant miscalculations. New product development relies on accurate understanding of customer needs, making it susceptible to sampling biases and survey processing errors. Personalization and recommendation systems depend on clean customer behavior data, with quality issues leading to poor customer experiences. And any decision involving predictions about human behavior becomes problematic when the underlying data contains systematic biases or integrity issues. The amplification effect is especially concerning in predictive modeling. When data errors enter machine learning systems, the models don't simply reproduce these errors, they learn from them, identifying illusory patterns and relationships that don't exist in reality. A 5% error rate in raw data can lead to predictions that are off by 15-20%, as these errors interact with model assumptions and mathematical transformations. This amplification effect explains why seemingly minor data quality issues can lead to catastrophic decision errors. The financial impact of these errors is substantial across all industries. According to IBM, poor data quality costs the U.S. economy approximately $3.1 trillion annually. Gartner research indicates that the average financial impact of poor data quality on organizations amounts to 12.9 million per year. More specifically, data quality issues are responsible for an average of 15 to 20% of operating budget waste in typical enterprises. For data-intensive sectors like financial services, healthcare, and e-commerce, these percentages can be significantly higher. What makes addressing these issues particularly challenging is the difficulty in tracing bad decisions back to their data quality origins. When a strategic initiative fails to deliver expected results, organizations typically examine their execution, market conditions, or competitive responses. They rarely investigate whether the underlying data that informed the decision was fundamentally flawed. This creates a dangerous scenario where companies might conclude they have strategy problems when they actually have data quality problems. By the time negative outcomes become apparent, the connection to the original data issues has often been obscured by time, multiple transformations, and the complexity of organizational decision-making. Leaders ask why their carefully considered strategies aren't working, unaware that the facts upon which they based those strategies were corrupted from the start. So which business decisions are most vulnerable to this data quality problem? Any decision that relies on identifying patterns across large data sets, predicts future outcomes based on historical data, segments customers or markets based on multiple attributes, or allocates resources according to complex criteria. In practice, this encompasses most of the highest stakes decisions in modern organizations: market expansion, product development, customer experience design, pricing strategy, and investment prioritization. Now that we understand the stakes, let's examine how to identify if your data is being manipulated by forces you never suspected. Accident or sabotage. Patterns of data corruption. How can you tell if your data issues are random accidents or something more systematic? This distinction is crucial because random errors and systematic corruption require completely different remediation approaches. When examining data quality issues, we need to distinguish between three categories of problems. Random errors occur naturally in any dataset: human input mistakes, occasional sensor malfunctions, or connectivity issues that drop records. These errors follow no pattern and typically affect a small percentage of records. Systematic errors follow consistent patterns caused by flawed processes, misconfigured sensors, incorrect calculation formulas, or buggy code in data pipelines. The third category is intentional manipulation, where data is deliberately altered to achieve specific outcomes. The key difference between these categories lies in their patterns. Random errors appear as statistical noise distributed evenly throughout your dataset with no correlation to specific variables, time periods, or record types. Systematic errors create consistent patterns that can be traced to specific processes or transformations. Intentional manipulation typically shows focused alterations in areas that impact key metrics or performance indicators. To determine which type of corruption affects your data, you need a forensic approach that examines both the affected data points and the patterns they form. This investigation begins by isolating suspicious records and examining their metadata: creation times, source systems, processing paths, and modification histories. This metadata often contains the first clues, pointing toward systematic issues or deliberate tampering. The visualization techniques that reveal these patterns differ from standard business intelligence approaches. Rather than focusing on the data values themselves, forensic data analysis examines the distribution of errors and anomalies across your dataset. One particularly effective visualization is the heat map of error frequencies across different dimensions. In our investigation, we created a matrix showing error rates across time periods and data sources. This immediately revealed that certain ETL processes were producing significantly higher error rates during specific time windows. Another revealing visualization is the temporal pattern analysis, which plots error occurrences against time. Random errors appear as evenly distributed points with no discernible pattern. Systematic errors typically show cyclical patterns or sudden changes that coincide with system modifications. When we applied this technique to our timestamp anomalies, we discovered distinct clusters occurring every 72 hours, precisely when a specific batch job executed. Statistical tests provide quantitative evidence to distinguish random noise from systematic issues. The chi-square test helps determine if error distributions differ significantly from what random chance would produce. In our investigation, this test confirmed that the distribution of missing values across customer segments was highly non-random, with a p-value of 0.003, indicating systematic exclusion of certain data types. Autocorrelation analysis examines whether errors at one point in time predict errors at later points. Random errors show no autocorrelation, while systematic issues typically demonstrate strong temporal relationships. Our timestamp data showed an autocorrelation coefficient of 0.78 at a 72-hour lag, a clear indicator of systematic issues tied to a specific process. Benford's law analysis can reveal manipulation in numerical data by checking if the distribution of leading digits follows expected patterns. When applied to our financial transaction data, sections of our dataset showed significant deviations from Benford's distribution, highlighting areas requiring closer examination. The timeline analysis technique proved particularly valuable in our investigation. We created a comprehensive timeline tracking every significant event affecting our data pipeline: code deployments, configuration changes, system upgrades, and scheduled maintenance. We then overlaid this timeline with our error rate measurements and anomaly detections. This visualization revealed a critical pattern. Our timestamp inconsistencies began exactly 4 hours after a seemingly minor configuration change to our ETL process. The specific change modified how our system handled time zone conversions during data processing. It was implemented to fix an unrelated reporting issue and passed all standard testing protocols. However, under certain conditions, specifically when processing data spanning midnight in specific time zones, the logic introduced a subtle error that shifted timestamps by exactly 72 hours for approximately 15% of records. This systematic error propagated through our entire analytics pipeline, creating the patterns we had detected. While our issue stemmed from accidental corruption, intentional data manipulation shows distinctly different patterns. In one case I consulted on, a sales team had been manipulating performance data by selectively reclassifying transactions between reporting periods. The manipulation wasn't obvious in the aggregate numbers, but statistical analysis revealed an unusual distribution of transaction modifications that always benefited the current quarter's targets. The pattern showed modifications consistently moving transactions across quarter boundaries in one direction only, a statistical impossibility if the changes were legitimate corrections. Another example involved fraudulent reporting in clinical research, where a researcher had fabricated patient results. The manipulation wasn't detected through standard quality checks because the falsified data remained within expected ranges. However, when analyzed for statistical fingerprints, the fabricated results showed suspiciously perfect statistical distributions and lacked the natural random variation present in genuine clinical data. These examples highlight the critical difference between accidental and intentional corruption. Accidental errors typically affect data indiscriminately and show patterns tied to specific processes or technical constraints. Intentional manipulation targets specific metrics or outcomes and often shows unusual statistical properties designed to avoid detection by standard quality checks. To detect these patterns in your own data, focus on 4 key indicators. First, look for temporal patterns in error rates and anomalies. Systematic issues almost always show time-based correlations. Second, examine metadata inconsistencies, particularly around creation and modification timestamps. Third, analyze statistical distributions of key metrics for unusual patterns that defy natural variation. Finally, track coincidences between data anomalies and system changes, personnel shifts, or reporting deadlines. The specific patterns that reveal intentional versus accidental corruption are distinct. Intentional manipulation typically shows selective modification of high-impact records, changes that consistently benefit specific metrics or targets, unusual statistical perfection in supposedly random data, and modification patterns that correlate with reporting deadlines or performance reviews. Accidental corruption more commonly presents as consistent errors across record types, patterns linked to specific technical processes, error rates that remain stable until system changes occur, and issues that affect even metrics with no performance implications. By understanding these distinctive patterns, you can quickly determine whether your data quality issues stem from random chance, systematic errors, or possible manipulation. This diagnosis is essential for applying the appropriate solution. Fixing random errors requires better validation controls. Addressing systematic corruption demands process corrections, while intentional manipulation necessitates governance and accountability measures. These patterns don't just affect your reports, they're silently undermining your AI models too. The machine learning multiplier effect. Is your AI model actually learning from corrupted examples, making it worse with every training cycle? This question highlights perhaps the most concerning aspect of data quality issues: their ability to silently undermine machine learning systems that increasingly drive business decisions. Machine learning models interact with data quality in ways fundamentally different from traditional analysis. While a human analyst might recognize and mentally adjust for obvious data anomalies, ML models lack this critical judgment. Instead, they faithfully learn whatever patterns exist in their training data, including patterns created by systematic errors. This creates a dangerous amplification effect where small data quality issues transform into significant prediction errors. Consider what happens when a model trains on data containing the kinds of timestamp inconsistencies we discovered. The model doesn't know these timestamps are incorrect. Instead, it detects correlations between these corrupted timestamps and other variables, learning relationships that don't actually exist in the real world. When this model makes predictions on new data, it applies these illusory patterns, generating increasingly distorted outputs. In our forecasting project, we conducted an experiment that vividly demonstrated this amplification effect. We created identical models and trained one on our original dataset containing the timestamp anomalies, and another on a cleaned version where we corrected these issues. The results were stark. On validation data, the model trained on corrupted data showed a mean absolute error of 31.2%, while the model trained on clean data achieved just 12.7% error. A seemingly minor data quality issue had more than doubled our prediction error. This effect becomes even more troubling when examining specific segments of the data. For customer cohorts most affected by the timestamp anomalies, prediction errors reached 68%. Effectively rendering the forecast useless for decision-making. Yet the aggregate performance metrics masked these catastrophic segment-level failures, showing only moderately decreased accuracy overall. We visualized how this bias encoded itself into the model parameters by creating influence maps, showing which input features most affected the predictions. In the model trained on clean data, expected business drivers like promotions, seasonality, and price changes showed the highest influence. But in the model trained on corrupted data, several timestamp-derived features gained disproportionate importance, with the model assigning significant predictive weight to what were essentially data artifacts. This visualization revealed something crucial about how ML models process corrupted data. They don't simply inherit the error rate present in the training data. They actively learn to rely on the systematic patterns within those errors. This creates a multiplier effect where each additional training cycle on corrupted data reinforces and amplifies the impact of the original quality issues. The concept of garbage in, garbage out is well established in computing, but machine learning transforms this principle into something more dangerous. Garbage in, systematic garbage out. Our forecasting model didn't produce random errors, it produced systematically biased predictions that consistently underestimated demand following the corrupted timestamp patterns. These systematic prediction errors created a false sense of confidence because they appeared consistent and therefore trustworthy to business users. A particularly sobering example from our project involved customer churn prediction. Our model consistently misclassified a specific segment of high-value customers as low churn risk, despite historical evidence suggesting otherwise. Investigation revealed that data quality issues had created artificial patterns in their engagement metrics. The model learned these patterns and systematically underestimated churn probability for this entire customer segment, potentially costing millions in preventable customer losses. Research on how different ML architectures respond to data quality issues shows significant variation. Simple models like linear regression tend to average out random errors but remain highly vulnerable to systematic corruption. Complex models like deep neural networks can actually perform worse with corrupted data because their flexibility allows them to precisely learn the error patterns. Tree-based models like random forests show moderate robustness to random errors, but still encode systematic corruption into their decision paths. A 2019 study by Microsoft Research found that modern deep learning architectures amplify input data errors by factors of 2.5 to 10, depending on the specific type of corruption and model architecture. More concerning, the research showed that standard model evaluation techniques often fail to detect this amplification because test data sets typically contain the same quality issues as training data. What makes these problems particularly difficult to detect after models are deployed is their selective impact. Models trained on corrupted data don't necessarily perform poorly across all predictions. They typically show acceptable accuracy for most cases, but catastrophically fail for specific segments or scenarios where the data quality issues had the strongest influence. These selective failures often hide within aggregate performance metrics, only becoming apparent when examining granular prediction errors. The timeline of discovery compounds this challenge. The connection between data quality issues and model failures typically only becomes apparent long after deployment, when enough prediction errors accumulate to trigger investigation. By this point, business decisions have already been made based on flawed outputs, and the causal link to original data quality problems has become obscured by time and intervening processes. In our case, several months passed before we connected our forecast inaccuracies to the timestamp corruption issues. During this period, the organization made inventory and staffing decisions based on systematically biased predictions, creating operational inefficiencies that persisted long after we identified and fixed the underlying data issues. How does this data quality issue affect machine learning model accuracy in practical terms? Our investigation revealed three primary mechanisms. First, models trained on corrupted data develop incorrect feature importance, giving weight to variables based on artificial patterns rather than true business relationships. Second, they generate systematically biased predictions for specific segments or scenarios most affected by the quality issues. Third, they create false confidence by producing consistently wrong predictions rather than visibly random ones. The impact on business outcomes extends beyond simple accuracy metrics. Models trained on corrupted data lead to misallocated resources, overlooked risks, missed opportunities, and fundamentally flawed strategic decisions. They create a dangerous situation where organizations believe they're making data-driven decisions while actually being guided by systematically distorted information. This problem will only grow more acute as organizations increasingly automate decision-making through AI systems. Unlike human analysts who might eventually notice counterintuitive results, automated systems will continue applying learned patterns from corrupted data indefinitely unless specific quality controls intervene. Each training cycle on corrupted data reinforces these distortions, potentially creating a feedback loop where model outputs guide business actions that generate new data, which then trains the next model iteration on increasingly biased information. The multiplier effect of machine learning on data quality issues transforms what might be tolerable error rates in traditional analysis into potentially catastrophic distortions in automated decision systems. This reality demands a fundamental shift in how organizations approach data quality, from a nice-to-have technical consideration to an essential prerequisite for trustworthy AI. Let me show you a simple test that can reveal if your data has these hidden problems. The 5-minute data quality test. What if you could diagnose your data's integrity problems with just 5 minutes and 3 simple checks? After spending weeks investigating our data quality issues, I distilled our approach into a straightforward diagnostic test that any data professional can run on their data sets. This isn't a comprehensive audit, but rather a rapid screening tool to identify if your data likely contains systematic corruption that warrants deeper investigation. The concept of diagnostic screening is familiar in medicine. Doctors use quick tests to determine if more thorough examination is needed. The same principle applies to data quality. You don't need complex tools or extensive processes to identify warning signs. You need targeted checks that quickly reveal patterns indicating systematic issues. The three-part test we developed requires only basic analytical tools and can be completed in under 5 minutes for most datasets. It won't catch every possible data quality issue, but it reliably detects the most common patterns of systematic corruption, the ones that typically cause the most significant business impact. This exact test helped us expose our data quality conspiracy after months of frustration. The first time we ran it, the results were so clear that we immediately understood why our models had been performing inconsistently. The test revealed patterns that had remained hidden despite weeks of conventional troubleshooting. Let's start with the first check: temporal consistency analysis. This test examines how your data behaves across time to identify unnatural patterns. Begin by selecting a key metric in your dataset, ideally one critical to your business decisions. Create a simple time series plot showing this metric's values over time. Rather than looking at the actual values, focus on the patterns of change. In clean data, you'll typically see natural variations following business cycles, weekly patterns for retail data, monthly patterns for subscription businesses, or seasonal trends for industries affected by weather or holidays. What you're looking for are regular patterns that don't align with any known business cycle. When we performed this check on our website traffic data, we plotted daily visitors over 6 months. At first glance, the chart showed expected weekly patterns with weekend dips. But when we examined the data more closely, we noticed subtle but consistent fluctuations every 72 hours. A pattern that had no business explanation. These unnaturally regular cycles were our first indication of systematic data corruption. To run this check effectively, use a granular time unit, hourly or daily rather than weekly or monthly. Aggregating at higher levels often obscures the subtle patterns that indicate quality issues. Also try applying a moving average to smooth out normal business cycles, making artificial patterns more visible. The second check is distribution comparison across different time periods. This test reveals whether your data's statistical properties remain consistent over time or show unexplained shifts. Select your key metric again and create histograms showing its distribution during different time periods. For this test, divide your data into at least 3 different time segments of equal length. Create a histogram for each segment, then overlay them for comparison. In clean data, the shape of these distributions should remain relatively consistent unless there have been significant business changes like new product launches or market expansions. When we applied this test to our customer purchase data, we compared 3 consecutive months of transactions. The distributions from months 1 and 3 were nearly identical, but month 2 showed a distinctly different shape with a shifted mean and reduced variance. This unexplained change in statistical properties indicated a potential data quality issue during that specific time period. To enhance this check, calculate basic statistical measures for each time period: mean, median, standard deviation, and kurtosis. Track these values over time and look for sudden changes that don't correspond to known business events. These shifts often indicate points where data processing logic changed or errors were introduced. The third check is relationship verification between correlated variables. This test examines whether established relationships between variables remain consistent or show unexplained changes. Select 2 variables in your dataset that should have a stable relationship, like website visits and purchases, or advertising spend and new customers. Create a scatter plot showing these variables against each other and color code the points by time period. In clean data, the relationship pattern should remain consistent across different time periods, forming a single coherent cluster or trend line. Look for distinct clusters or changing relationship patterns that separate by time period. When we performed this check on our marketing data, we plotted advertising spend against new customer acquisitions. Data points from the first 2 months formed a clear linear relationship. However, points from the 3rd month created a separate cluster with a different slope, indicating that the relationship between these variables had fundamentally changed without any corresponding change in marketing strategy. To strengthen this check, calculate the correlation coefficient between your selected variables for each time period. Track how this coefficient changes over time and investigate any significant variations. A sudden change in correlation often indicates that one or both variables have been affected by data quality issues. These 3 simple checks can be implemented With basic tools available to any data professional, using Python with libraries like Pandas and Matplotlib, you can create a script that runs these tests automatically on your key datasets. Even using Excel, you can implement simplified versions of these checks through pivot tables and basic charting. Here's a simplified Python code snippet for the temporal consistency check. Python import pandas, SPD import matplotlib, pyplot as split from stats models, TSA. Seasonal import, seasonal decompose, how to aggregate data by day, daily data, xsibu, gf, group by, pd, grouper, key, timestamp, freq d. Metric, mean, apply seasonal decomposition to identify irregular patterns, result. Seasonal decompose, daily data, model additive, period, and 7. Assuming weekly seasonality, plot the irregular component to look for patterns, plot. Figure fixed size 12.6, result, resident plot aplt.title, irregular component, residuals, after removing seasonal patterns. Plot. Tight layout, plot, show. When we ran these 3 checks across our core datasets, they immediately highlighted issues in approximately 30% of our metrics. The temporal consistency check revealed the 72-hour pattern in our website data. The distribution comparison identified unusual shifts in transaction values during specific time periods, and the relationship verification exposed inconsistent correlations between marketing spend and outcomes. These simple tests had revealed in minutes what our team had missed for months. They cut through the complexity of our data pipeline and exposed clear patterns indicating systematic data corruption. What simple test can you run today to check if your data is affected? Start with these 3 checks on your most business-critical metrics. Look for unnatural temporal patterns, unexplained distribution shifts, and inconsistent relationships between variables. If any of these checks reveals suspicious patterns, you likely have underlying data quality issues that warrant deeper investigation. Now let's look at which industries face the highest risk from these hidden issues. Industries at the quality crossroads. Is your industry especially vulnerable to the data quality conspiracy? While every organization that uses data faces quality challenges, certain sectors experience more severe consequences from undetected issues. The unique data environments, regulatory requirements, and business models of different industries create specific vulnerability patterns worth examining. Industry vulnerability to data quality issues doesn't merely depend on the volume of data processed. More important factors include data complexity, the number of transformation steps between collection and decision-making, regulatory consequences of errors, and the direct impact on customer outcomes. These factors create an industry-specific risk profile that determines how severely data quality problems affect operations and results. Research conducted by the MIT Information Quality Program found substantial variation in the rate of undetected data issues across industries. Healthcare organizations reported the highest rate, with approximately 47% of systematic data quality issues remaining undetected for more than 6 months. Financial services followed at 41%, retail at 38%, manufacturing at 36%, and technology companies at 29%. Government agencies showed a surprising 52% rate of long-term undetected issues, though with significant variation between departments. This research reveals an important pattern. Industries with the most complex data ecosystems, involving multiple systems that evolved independently over time, tend to have the highest rates of hidden data quality problems. These environments create perfect conditions for systematic errors to develop and persist undetected. Healthcare provides perhaps the most concerning example of an industry where data quality directly impacts human outcomes. In a Boston hospital, medication dosing errors occurred when patient weight data was inconsistently recorded in pounds versus kilograms across different systems. The error went undetected for months because the values remained within plausible ranges, but resulted in approximately 13% of patients receiving incorrect medication dosages. Another healthcare example involved a clinical decision support system that made incorrect treatment recommendations due to lab result data that wasn't properly normalized across different testing facilities. While individual doctors sometimes questioned the recommendations, the systematic data quality issue wasn't identified for nearly 8 months potentially affecting thousands of treatment decisions. Healthcare's vulnerability stems from its exceptionally complex data environment. Patient information flows through multiple disconnected systems, from practice management software to electronic health records, lab systems, insurance databases, and pharmacy systems. Each transition creates opportunities for data corruption, while life-critical decisions demand absolute accuracy. Financial services firms face a different set of challenges, with both regulatory and operational risks stemming from data quality issues. A regional bank discovered that their customer risk scoring model had been making systematically biased assessments due to address data that contained normalization errors. The issue resulted in approximately 3,800 customers being incorrectly flagged for enhanced due diligence, creating unnecessary friction and compliance costs. More concerning was a wealth management firm whose portfolio allocation recommendations contained systematic errors due to incorrectly processed time series data on fund performance. The error resulted in risk profiles that understated volatility for certain investment categories, potentially exposing clients to more risk than they had agreed to accept. This type of error creates significant regulatory exposure under fiduciary responsibility requirements. The financial sector's vulnerability comes from its heavy reliance on time series data, complex mathematical transformations, and the need to integrate information from numerous global sources operating under different standards and conventions. When combined with strict regulatory requirements, these factors create an environment where data quality issues can quickly escalate into material business risks. Retail and e-commerce companies face their own data quality challenges, particularly around customer information. A national retailer discovered systematic errors in how their customer segmentation model processed purchase history data. Timestamp inconsistencies, similar to those we encountered, had created artificial patterns in repurchase intervals, leading to incorrectly timed promotional campaigns that showed mysteriously poor performance. Another e-commerce company found that approximately 8% of their product recommendation engine's outputs were compromised by data pipeline issues that incorrectly linked purchase histories across customer accounts. The error created seemingly random but actually systematic distortions in their recommendation algorithm, reducing conversion rates for affected customers by an estimated 23%. Retail vulnerability stems from the massive volume of transaction data processed, the complex customer journey across multiple channels, and the heavy reliance on recommendation systems and personalization algorithms that amplify small data quality issues into significant customer experience problems. Manufacturing provides compelling examples of how data quality affects physical products and processes. An automotive components manufacturer discovered quality control issues when sensor data used to verify part specifications contained systematic calibration errors. The corruption wasn't obvious because values remained within expected ranges, but resulted in parts that barely met specifications being incorrectly classified as high quality. This led to premature failures when these components were used in high-stress applications. A more dramatic manufacturing example involved a product design flaw that wasn't detected during simulation because material property data contained systematic errors. The corrupted data made the material appear more heat-resistant than it actually was, resulting in a design that passed virtual testing but failed in physical prototypes. The error delayed product launch by nearly 7 months and required significant redesign work. Manufacturing's vulnerability comes from its reliance on sensor networks, complex simulation models, and quality control systems that must maintain accuracy across physical and digital environments. Small data quality issues can manifest as physical defects in products, creating safety risks and warranty costs. The industry pattern that emerges shows that risk increases with data complexity, transformation depth, and consequence severity. Industries processing customer data through multiple systems before making automated decisions face particularly high risks. Those where data quality directly affects human safety or financial security experience the most severe consequences from undetected issues. Which industries are most at risk from this overlooked issue? Healthcare leads the list due to its fragmented data ecosystem and life-critical decisions. Financial services follows closely because of regulatory consequences. and the direct impact on customer assets. Retail and e-commerce face significant risks around customer experience and personalization effectiveness. Manufacturing confronts unique challenges where data quality directly affects physical product integrity. Technology, media, telecommunications, and energy fall into a middle tier of risk, while education, agriculture, and basic materials show somewhat lower vulnerability, though still with significant potential impact from data quality issues. Your industry's specific vulnerabilities should inform your approach to data quality management. Organizations in high-risk sectors need more comprehensive monitoring systems, frequent cross-functional quality reviews, and governance structures that create clear accountability for data integrity throughout the entire information lifecycle. Let's turn to the practical steps you can take tomorrow to protect your data integrity. The 3 pillars of data quality defense. How can you implement a data quality shield that requires minimal resources but offers maximum protection? After discovering and fixing our data quality issues, our team developed a practical approach that balances thoroughness with efficiency. This framework doesn't require expensive tools or specialized staff, just a structured methodology that addresses the most common failure points. Data quality protection works best when implemented as layers of defense. Much like cybersecurity employs multiple barriers rather than a single protection mechanism, data quality requires overlapping safeguards that catch different types of issues at different stages of your data pipeline. This layered approach ensures that problems missed by one check will likely be caught by another before affecting critical business decisions. Our experience revealed 3 essential components that form the foundation of effective data quality management. We call these the 3 pillars of data quality defense. When implemented together, these pillars transformed our data reliability from a constant source of uncertainty to a trusted foundation for decision-making. The improvement wasn't marginal, it was transformative. The first pillar is automated validation checks at every pipeline stage. Most organizations implement basic validation only at data entry points and final analysis stages, leaving the middle of the pipeline vulnerable. Our approach distributes validation throughout the entire process, creating continuous quality monitoring rather than point-in-time checks. These automated checks apply different validation rules appropriate to each stage of processing. At ingestion, they verify format adherence, completeness, and basic range checks. During transformation, they confirm relationship consistency between fields and compare aggregated values against expected ranges. At the analytics stage, they test for statistical anomalies and pattern breaks that might indicate upstream issues. The key is creating validation rules that generate immediate alerts when potential issues arise. For instance, we implemented simple statistical process control limits around key metrics that trigger notifications when values deviate beyond expected ranges. Another effective check compares the distribution of incoming data against historical patterns, flagging significant shifts that warrant investigation. A practical example from our implementation involves timestamp validation. We now automatically verify that record creation times, modification times, and business event times maintain logical consistency throughout processing. This simple check would have immediately caught the 72-hour shift issue that plagued our forecasting model. These automated checks don't require sophisticated tools. We built our initial validation framework using basic Python scripts triggered by our existing data pipeline scheduler. The entire system took one developer approximately 3 days to implement, yet it has caught numerous potential issues before they affected downstream analysis. The second pillar is visualization dashboards that make quality issues immediately visible. Data quality problems often hide in plain sight when presented as numbers in reports or logs. Effective visualization transforms these subtle patterns into obvious visual anomalies that demand attention. Our quality visualization dashboard differs from standard business intelligence reporting. Instead of showing business metrics, it displays quality indicators like completeness percentages, error rates, processing times, and distribution statistics. The dashboards use color coding to highlight metrics outside acceptable ranges and trend indicators to show whether quality is improving or degrading over time. 1. Particularly effective visualization shows record counts and error rates at each stage of our processing pipeline. This simple flowchart immediately reveals where records are being dropped or flagged, helping quickly isolate problematic transformations. Another useful visualization displays heat maps of data completeness across different dimensions, making it easy to spot patterns of missing values that might indicate systematic issues. We also implemented parallel coordinate plots showing how key quality metrics change over time. This visualization technique makes it immediately obvious when relationships between metrics change unexpectedly, often indicating underlying processing issues. Creating these dashboards required minimal technical resources. We built our initial version using open-source visualization libraries and a simple web interface. The entire dashboard took approximately 1 week to develop, but has since become one of our most valuable tools for maintaining data quality. The third pillar is cross-functional quality reviews that break down silos. Technical controls alone can't address all data quality challenges because many issues stem from miscommunication or misaligned understanding across different teams. Regular cross-functional reviews create shared ownership for data quality and help identify issues that automated checks might miss. We established a bi-weekly data quality review meeting, bringing together representatives from data engineering, data science, business analysis, and key stakeholders. The meeting follows a structured format where we review quality metrics, discuss recent alerts, examine upcoming data pipeline changes, and address any quality concerns from business users. These reviews have proven invaluable for addressing the organizational blind spots I discussed earlier. By having engineering and analytics teams in the same conversation, we quickly identify situations where each group made different assumptions about how data should be processed or interpreted. The regular cadence ensures that quality remains a priority rather than an afterthought. One specific practice that emerged from these reviews is the data quality pre-mortem before major pipeline changes. The team discusses what could go wrong with the planned changes, identifies vulnerable points, and establishes additional monitoring for the transition period. This simple exercise has prevented numerous potential issues by highlighting risks before implementation. Implementing these cross-functional reviews requires no technical resources at all, just organizational commitment and a clear meeting structure. The return on this time investment has been substantial, with each hour spent in review potentially saving days of troubleshooting later. The impact of implementing these 3 pillars has been remarkable. In the 12 months since establishing our data quality framework, we've seen a 94% reduction in production data issues requiring remediation. Our model accuracy has improved by an average of 18% across all forecasting models. Most significantly, we've eliminated the costly business decisions driven by corrupted data that previously cost our organization hundreds of thousands of dollars. Before implementing these changes, approximately 23% of our analytical outputs contained some form of data quality issue. That figure has dropped to less than 3%, with most remaining issues caught before affecting business decisions. The time spent troubleshooting data problems has decreased by 78%, allowing our team to focus on creating value rather than fixing issues. What 3 steps can immediately improve your data quality safeguards? First, implement automated validation checks that verify data integrity throughout your entire pipeline, not just at entry and exit points. Second, create visualization dashboards specifically designed to highlight quality metrics and make issues immediately visible. Finally, establish regular cross-functional quality reviews that bring together technical and business perspectives to identify and address potential problems. These measures don't require significant resources or specialized expertise, just a structured approach and organizational commitment to data quality. The return on this modest investment comes in more accurate analysis, better business decisions, and significantly reduced time spent troubleshooting mysterious data issues. Now I'll reveal exactly how we track down the root cause of our elusive data problem. The investigation uncovering the truth. What happens when you follow the data quality trail all the way to its source? After discovering our data contained systematic corruption, we needed to find the exact cause, rather than just treating the symptoms. This investigation required a methodical approach that examined every stage of our data's journey from collection to analysis. Our investigation methodology borrowed techniques from both forensic analysis and software debugging. We established a war room dedicated to this single purpose, with whiteboards covering the walls and monitors displaying various metrics and logs. This physical space became crucial for the investigation, allowing us to see all aspects of the problem simultaneously instead of jumping between different systems and screens. We began by creating a comprehensive map of our entire data pipeline, documenting each system, transformation, and handoff point. The visualization revealed surprising complexity. Our data passed through 14 distinct processing stages across 8 different systems before reaching analysts. This mapping exercise alone identified several potential failure points that we hadn't previously considered. With our map as a guide, we implemented detailed logging at each stage of the pipeline. The logs captured not just errors, but complete state information showing exactly how data values changed during each transformation. This enhanced monitoring revealed that the timestamp inconsistencies weren't created at a single point. They emerged gradually across multiple processing stages, making them particularly difficult to detect with standard monitoring. The investigation proceeded through 4 distinct phases. First, we characterized the exact pattern of corruption by analyzing affected records. Second, we traced the affected records backward through each system to identify where the pattern first appeared. Third, we examined all code and configuration changes that might have affected those systems. Finally, we tested potential fixes in a controlled environment to confirm the root cause. My conspiracy board became the focal point of our investigation. I printed and posted examples of corrupted records, system logs, code snippets, and timeline events. Using red string, I physically connected related elements, creating a visual representation of the relationships between different symptoms and potential causes. What initially looked like the work of someone losing their mind gradually revealed meaningful patterns as our understanding deepened. One pivotal moment came when I connected 2 seemingly unrelated issues, the 72-hour timestamp shifts and an intermittent processing delay in one of our data transformation jobs. The string between these 2 nodes created a literal connection that sparked a new hypothesis. Perhaps the processing delay was causing records to be processed out of sequence, creating the timestamp anomalies. This hypothesis led us to trace how data flowed through our batch processing systems. We discovered that certain records were being held in a queue when processing capacity reached limits, but the queuing system had a design flaw. Instead of maintaining FIFO, first in, first out order, it sometimes reordered records based on an internal prioritization algorithm that considered record type and size. This processing reordering wasn't well documented and hadn't caused problems until we increased the volume of data flowing through the system. Under higher loads, the prioritization became more aggressive, creating significant reordering that affected timestamp-dependent calculations downstream. Following this thread, we dug into the specific transformations applied to timestamps during processing. Each system in our pipeline handled timestamps slightly differently. Some stored them as epoch seconds, others as formatted strings, and still others as native datetime objects. These inconsistent representations created conversion points where errors could occur. The breakthrough came when we identified a specific ETL process that converted timestamps between different formats. The code contained a subtle logic error in how it handled time zone conversions. Under normal circumstances, the error had no effect. But when combined with the processing reordering issue, it created the exact 72-hour shifts we had observed in our data. The technical details revealed a classic case of compounding errors. The ETL process used a function that applied time zone adjustments based on the record's processing batch rather than the record's inherent timestamp. When records were processed in sequence, this created no issues because all records in a batch had similar timestamps. But when the queuing system reordered records, placing some records with older timestamps into batches with newer records, the time zone function applied incorrect adjustments. The specific code causing the problem was surprisingly simple. Just 3 lines in a transformation script that had been written nearly 2 years earlier. Def adjust timestamp, record time, batch time, time zone offset x, get time zone offset batch time, return record time, time zone offset. The function was intended to standardize all timestamps to UTC. However, it calculated the time zone offset based on the batch processing time rather than the record's own time. This created no issues when records were processed promptly. But when the queuing system delayed some records by exactly 3 days, 72 hours, they received time zone adjustments appropriate for the current date rather than their creation date. This seemingly minor implementation detail had remained hidden for months because it only affected records that experienced significant processing delays. As data volumes increased, more records experienced these delays, making the issue more prominent and finally noticeable in our analyses. The fix itself was remarkably simple. We modified the function to calculate time zone offsets based on the record's own timestamp rather than the batch time. Def adjust timestamp. Record time, batch time. Time zone offset, get time zone offset, record time. Batch, changed from batch time return, record time. Time zone offset. Testing this fix in our development environment confirmed it resolved the timestamp inconsistencies. Records processed out of sequence now received the correct time zone adjustments, eliminating the 72-hour shifts entirely, but implementing the fix required careful planning. The incorrect function had been processing data for nearly 2 years, meaning historical data contained these systematic errors. Simply fixing the code going forward would create a new inconsistency between historical and new data. We developed a comprehensive remediation plan that included correcting the ETL process for new data, reprocessing historical data where feasible, and documenting the timing and nature of the change to alert analysts working with cross-time period analyses. The full correction process took several weeks, but ultimately restored integrity to both real-time and historical data. How did we track down the root cause of this elusive data problem? By combining systematic investigation methods with visual mapping of the entire problem space, tracing issues across system boundaries, and examining how seemingly minor implementation details interact with changing conditions, like increased data volumes. The investigation revealed that data quality issues often stem not from a single catastrophic failure, but from the subtle interaction of minor flaws across multiple systems. Let me show you how to become the data quality advocate your organization needs. Becoming the data quality advocate. How can you transform from data analyst to data quality champion without alienating your team? This question reflects the reality that technical solutions alone won't fix data quality problems. Even the best monitoring systems and validation rules require organizational buy-in to be effective. The real challenge isn't implementing technical controls, it's changing how your organization thinks about data quality. Most organizations resist quality initiatives because they perceive them as obstacles to speed and efficiency. They view quality checks as bureaucratic hurdles that slow down development and delay insights. This perception creates significant resistance when you attempt to implement stronger controls or more rigorous validation processes. I experienced this resistance firsthand when I first raised concerns about our data quality issues. Team members responded with statements like, "We've always done it this way," or "We don't have time for additional checks." Leadership worried that focusing on quality would delay deliverables and disappoint stakeholders. Data engineers saw quality suggestions as implicit criticism of their work. The turning point came when I shifted my communication approach. Instead of focusing on technical deficiencies, I reframed data quality as a business continuity issue with direct impact on the metrics leadership cared about. This reframing transformed the conversation from technical nitpicking to strategic risk management. Several specific communication strategies proved particularly effective in overcoming resistance. First, we stopped using accusatory language that implied blame. Instead of stating the ETL process is creating errors, we used neutral phrasing. We've identified inconsistencies in timestamp processing that affect our forecasting accuracy. This subtle shift focuses attention on the issue rather than assigning fault. Second, we presented quality issues through the lens of business impact rather than technical correctness. Rather than explaining the technical details of timestamp processing errors, we demonstrated how these errors affected forecast accuracy, which directly impacted inventory decisions and ultimately cost money. This approach connected quality concerns to business outcomes, that executives already cared about. When discussing potential quality issues with team members, certain questions proved particularly effective at exposing problems without creating defensiveness. What would convince us that this data isn't telling us the whole story? Which assumptions are we making about this data that might not be true? If this analysis were completely wrong, how would we know? What patterns would we expect to see if this data contains systematic errors? These questions invite collaborative problem-solving rather than confrontation. They assume everyone shares the goal of accurate analysis and frame quality checking as intellectual curiosity rather than distrust. The most significant breakthrough came when we started framing data quality as a business issue rather than a technical problem. In meetings with leadership, we avoided technical jargon and instead used language that resonated with business priorities. For example, we didn't discuss timestamp normalization failures, but instead talked about inconsistent customer behavior data leading to inventory misjudgments costing approximately $230,000 last quarter. This business-focused framing connected quality issues directly to metrics executives already tracked and cared about. When quality problems were expressed as financial impacts, operational inefficiencies, or missed opportunities, leadership quickly moved from skepticism to support. Building allies across departments proved essential for implementing lasting quality improvements. We identified potential champions by mapping out which teams suffered most from poor data quality. Customer service teams struggling with inaccurate customer information became strong advocates. Marketing analysts frustrated by inconsistent campaign measurement eagerly supported our efforts. Product managers dealing with contradictory usage statistics joined our cause. With each potential ally, we connected quality improvements specifically to their goals. For marketing, we highlighted how cleaner data would improve attribution accuracy and campaign ROI measurement. For product teams, we demonstrated how consistent user behavior tracking would provide more reliable feature usage metrics. For finance, we showed how data quality improvements would reduce forecast variance and improve budget accuracy. These tailored messages helped build a coalition of supporters across different functional areas. When leadership saw that quality concerns weren't coming just from the data team, but from multiple departments, the organizational priority increased significantly. The data quality assessment reports we developed became powerful tools for driving action. Rather than creating technical documents filled with statistics and code examples, we designed simple one-page templates that communicated three critical elements: the specific quality issue identified, its business impact expressed in financial or operational terms, and recommended actions with clear owners and timelines. These reports followed a consistent format: quality issue, brief non-technical description of the problem; business impact, quantified effect on key metrics, costs, revenue, customer experience; root cause, simplified explanation without technical jargon; recommended action, clear, specific steps with responsible parties; expected improvement, projected benefit of implementing the fix. This format made quality issues accessible to non-technical stakeholders while still providing enough detail for technical teams to implement solutions. The clarity and consistency of these reports helped transform quality discussions from vague concerns to actionable plans. The organizational impact of successful advocacy extended far beyond fixing specific data issues. As quality improved, trust in data-driven decisions increased across the organization. Teams that had previously questioned analytical insights began embracing data-informed approaches. The data team's credibility grew, giving them more influence in strategic discussions. Perhaps most importantly, the organization developed what I call a quality reflex, an instinctive questioning of data quality before making significant decisions. This cultural shift created a sustainable foundation for data quality that didn't depend on any single person or system. How can you become a data quality advocate in your organization? Start by reframing quality as a business issue with concrete financial and operational impacts. Build allies by connecting quality to specific goals that matter to different departments. Use simple, non-technical communication that focuses on outcomes rather than processes. Create standardized reports that drive action rather than just documenting problems. And consistently demonstrate the business value of quality improvements through concrete examples and measured results. Remember that advocacy is fundamentally about influence rather than authority. Even without formal quality control responsibilities, you can drive significant improvements by asking the right questions, highlighting business impacts, and building coalitions across departments. As we wrap up this investigation, let's remember what's really at stake. The truth about data quality transcends technical considerations. At its core, it's about whether you can trust the foundation your business decisions rest upon. Poor data quality doesn't just create technical problems, it erodes trust in your entire analytics ecosystem. As data professionals, we carry a responsibility that goes beyond running analyses and building models. We must constantly question our assumptions and verify the integrity of our information. This vigilance isn't optional, it's fundamental to our role. In the complex world of modern data systems, adopting a healthy skepticism serves you well. Like Agent Mulder from the X-Files might say, trust no one, verify everything.